Hi, I'm Diana. I'm a freelance illustrator in Austin, Texas.
For our first project, let's make some easy bookmarkers. You can use any pretty paper that you've been saving or that you have lying around, and the typical size for a standard bookmark is 2 by 6 inches, but you can make these any size you want. I used a paper cutter to cut my papers and make sure the edges were all nice and neat, and then I'm going to use this lamination that requires a laminating machine for my first batch. I'm using this thermal laminator by Scotch brand, and then I will cut out my bookmarkers with scissors or with my paper cutter once I have them all sealed in the lamination. This one feels pretty durable. If you don't have a laminating machine, that's okay. You can use peel and stick lamination. There are so many varieties available, and this one is holographic, so I decided to go ahead and use this for my bookmark. And I'll laminate the front and the back of the cardstock to make sure that it's really durable and also like waterproof. After it's stuck on there tight, I'll go ahead and trim the excess off, and then I'll have this really pretty holographic bookmarker that I can personalize or add a tassel or whatever I want. If you punch a hole in the top, then you can add some really pretty ribbon or tassel or something just to make it like a little bit extra special. I decided just to use this ribbon that I had to make just a simple string at the top to stick out from the book to mark the pages. And the third way that you can laminate these without a machine or without peel and stick lamination is with packing tape. So I just ripped off a length of the packing tape. I'll laminate the front and the back of my bookmarker, and then I'll go ahead and cut the excess off just like I did before. The only thing with the packing tape is that it's not as thick, so the bookmark doesn't feel quite as durable as when you're using standard lamination or the peel and stick laminate. So it's just going to be like a little more prone to getting bent or like the corners getting bent. But it just depends who you're giving it to. If it was for a child, then it might not hold up over time. But for an adult with normal use, it should be fine. Here are my pretty new bookmarkers. You can also use tags. So I've been saving these thick tags that are on different items of clothing that I've purchased, and some of them are really nice cardstock, so the weight of them would be good for a bookmarker. I decided to use this one that looked like it would be the perfect size for like a small bookmark, and just painted over the branding that was on the front and added a sparkly ribbon to the top, and now I have a cute little sturdy bookmark. You can also decorate this with stickers or collage or decoupage, however you wish. For our next project, we'll be using some pretty recycling materials to make these faux postage stamps. So I have this stamp puncher, and I was using this to stamp out pretty papers to make these like fake postage stamps. You can even decorate your own paper and then just punch these out, and they make really fun little additions for like a card or your scrapbook or a journal or something like that. So you don't have to use a punch like this. If you don't have one or you don't want to buy one, you could use picking shears and just cut the stamps out using the edges to make it kind of like that stamped edge. Or you could just use like, they sell decorative scissors at craft stores and things like that. But I really love this stamp punch, so this is what I'll be using today. You can use any kind of paper for this. Doesn't even have to be paper. It could be cardstock or different packaging. Like if there's like a box of cookies that you like, it has like pretty packaging. This will stamp through cardboard too. So I use it for all kinds of different materials. But today I'll just be using these mailers. So I've been saving recycling, like anything that's like a pretty kind of pattern. I'll just go ahead and save it because I can use these different strips that are blank here for either bookmarks or stamps or something. Like I know I'll be able to use it for something. I even saved some of these papers from the calendar that I was kind of cutting up after I'm done with the month. Like I'll save the top and then just cut out these like areas that are blank and use it for different craft projects. So this is what I was using for my bookmarkers, but I have a couple pieces that are like kind of like a lot of good space that's workable that I'm going to be making stamps from. So what I like to do is just kind of line it up on this back side here until you get it to where you think the design looks good within the stamp. and then punch it out. If you punch it the front way, like the top down, it's kind of like you're punching it blind, so you don't know what you're going to end up with. And I found this works better for me. So I like what I see in the little window, so I'm just going to go ahead and punch it. And look how cute that is. I can use this on a card or on like a little envelope. My kids have mailboxes outside their doors, so I can make like a little fake envelope, like I'm mailing something, and put one of my stamps on it. Maybe not flowers, because they're boys. They probably wouldn't really want a flower stamp. Maybe something more cool for them. But these can be used in so many different ways. So I'm just going to punch a bunch of these out, and then I'll have them on hand for different projects, different craft projects, scrapbooking, things like that. One other thing I just wanted to point out was you can make yourself like a little guide like this, and I just punched this through like a cardboard box, and then you can hold it over top of the paper that you're wanting to punch to see if your design will fit into the stamp area. And like I kind of wanted to punch this one out. I thought it was cute. The little quote, it was on like this, it was like a gift recyclable tote bag, not a recyclable tote bag, but a fabric tote bag. And so I thought the design on it was kind of cute. It says, "Where flowers bloom, so does hope." And I thought that maybe it would fit on a stamp, but it looks like it's just like a little bit too big. But this might be a good chance to use the pinking shears to make the stamp edge with the pinking shears. So why don't we just give that a try? I trimmed it a little bit close to this edge. I wish I had left more space. I didn't realize I'd be using the pinking shears, but I think we can still make this work. And you could use a ruler to make sure you're cutting perfectly straight. I just kind of went for it here with the pinking shears, but if you wanted it to be perfectly nice and neat, then maybe put some lines with a ruler on the back. Okay, so I think that still came out pretty cute. It still looks like kind of like a fun stamp. If you can imagine if you put it up in the corner of an envelope, and even if you put like a canceled thing over it, then it would be really obvious it's supposed to be a stamp. So I still think that's pretty fun for like a scrapbook or a journal or something. So you can see I kind of like went crazy with this. I stamped so many things. I was so excited when I got my stamp punch, and I had all these ideas for different things I want to do. So I just went crazy, and I have so many different colors, and I thought about like sorting them by color and then doing like a scrapbook, not a scrapbook page, but a sketchbook page, and have like all like blue things on one page, like just a bunch of different fun like designs and stuff, and then maybe like all pink on one page. Just do it by color. There's really a lot of fun things you could do with this. You could see a lot of the potential here of collecting fake stamps. I've seen some people also do like one scrap a day, where they'll put like one thing, they punch out one little scrap each day with a stamp, and then they put it in their journal, and it looks really fun at the end of the month to see all the different designs they punched out. So you can see there's a lot of variety here, and it gets a little bit addicting, so you've been warned. For our next project, we're going to be making a junk journal. You can make one of these using just a box or materials you find in your recycling bin. I'm just going to be using this small cookie box. You could use a cereal box or any kind of cardboard that you have to make a front cover, a spine, and a back cover. So you just want to open it out. Try to do it carefully so you don't bend the cardboard or rip it. And then I'm going to cut off all of this excess here. So I'm just going to be left with the front panel for the cover, the front cover, and then the spine, and then the back cover. You can use a craft knife or like a blade to cut all this off, but I'm just going to be using these like cardboard scissors that I have just because it's easier. So just trim all this excess off until you have nice clean edges. And you can save these pieces too if you wanted to like stack this up to strengthen up your spine or things like that, so you don't have to throw away your little scraps. Okay, so now you have a nice clean base to work with. This cardboard can still be a little bit flimsy depending on, you know, like the packaging that you used. I happen to have 2 of these boxes, so I'm just going to open out the other one and then I'm just going to glue them together back to back so that it makes it a little bit stronger. For paper projects, I really like this Eileen's Clear Gel Tacky Glue. This works really well on paper. It doesn't like ripple up and it dries really fast. So this is what I'll be using today. You can use any kind of craft glue that you want, but this one works really well for cardboard. You could also do hot glue or something like this. Just use whatever you prefer. Okay, I have my 2 sheets of cardboard glued together here. I'm also going to wrap this with something pretty so it'll hold it together a little bit as well. But this feels much stronger now. The cardboard feels sturdier since it's double thickness, and I think it'll work really well for a base for a journal. You can also add an extra 3rd piece to the middle here for your spine just to make it even sturdier. I glued this on and then I decided I took it back off, you can see here, because I want to stitch my pages into this spine and then glue it down rather than stitching the pages into this thick cardboard here, because I don't have a hole punch that'll reach into the middle here to make the holes for the stitching, and you'll see what I mean in a second. But I thought it would be a little bit easier if I stitched my pages to this spine first and then glued it in, and that'll also make this spine area extra sturdy in the end so that you have like a nice strong book. So you have your base, but you're also going to need some pretty papers to put inside of this book. So I just went through and pulled out a lot of different, just kind of like random scrapbook papers that I have in my stash. And I'm just gonna see what will work for this book. I kind of wanted to make it like cohesive where the colors kind of coordinate and stuff. And this pile, I don't know how coordinated it is, but I just wanted to show you an example of what you can use. So this has everything from like professional scrapbook papers, like from scrapbook pads that are pre-printed, to things like just like graph paper and notebook paper, and just papers that I colored myself with like pastels or ink and stamps. We also have a few in here that are kind of textured, so I had my son crinkle these up, and I really like it. I like how it has like crinkly texture. I don't want them all to look like perfectly flat like this. It's really just your preference. So I have notebook paper, and I really like this edge where it's ripped out of the notebook, so I want to keep that on mine, but I know some people don't like it to be like a messy edge like that. So just use whatever papers that you prefer and you think would look good in your book. This is even just packing paper from shipments I received. It's pretty thin, so I think you would have to be careful about like if you're gluing things into your junk journal. You wouldn't want to use like, I feel like school glue or Elmer's glue or whatever is gonna be pretty hard to use on this because it'll get like so wet. It might leak through because this is real thin, but this glue would be fine for it. So I cut out some of those. Well, I didn't cut them, I ripped them because I wanted to have lots of texture and interesting edges and stuff. I don't like it to look all perfect and nice and neat. And this is just craft paper from like a pad of paper that's all craft paper. So I have some of those. And then I also wanted to point out that they don't all have to be the same size. So these are going to get trimmed anyway because this little base here is, you know, it's smaller than this, is 8.5 by 11. So they're going to get trimmed down anyhow. But I just wanted to point out that you can use like little sheets. It doesn't have to reach all the way to the edges. It's kind of interesting when you flip through if there's a mixture of patterns and sizes and textures and things like that. So I just have like all kinds of random stuff in here, and I'll go through it and make little bundles of like 12, and those will be what I stitch up. And then you're gonna put your bundles into your spine. But see, these are even papers that I stamped with ink, and this was a celery stock, and it just makes these pretty like roses. So you can just really get creative with this and include all kinds of variation. So next I'm just going to make these into like packets of like 12 sheets or so, because you're going to fold them over, so that will make 24. I might actually need more for a spine of this thickness. I wish I made this half the size, so like a 1-inch spine, you could probably do like 3 packs of 12 that are folded over. I might have to do a little extra for this size spine here. But I'm just going to work on organizing those into little packs, and when I'm making the little bundles, I'm going to be thinking about adding some variation to them to make sure that there's different sizes and also that the colors kind of look good together. And you have to think about too, when you fold it over, that it's going to repeat like on the other half of the little packet there. So I just want to make sure my book has a variety of colors throughout the whole thing. So between like all 3 packs of paper, and also just a lot of variety with textures and size. This is the first bundle I made. So when I was assembling these papers, I kind of just flipped through them to make sure that when you're flipping through your journal, it still looks nice. Like if there was going to be a white, blank white and a blank white like this touching each other, I tried to put something in between that has a pattern on both sides that would kind of break it up a little. And if there is like too much of the same color, just kind of think about like putting something in between to break it up. Like I don't want this craft paper right against this one. And then I have these little strips of paper, just kind of like weave those in throughout to kind of break up. If there's like a boring white page, you can put like a little strip of something fun or some texture or some colors or something, just because not all scrapbook paper is double-sided. So if you have a pack like mine where a lot of the backs are white, just kind of think about what you can do to break it up and make it look more interesting as somebody would be flipping through this journal. Okay, so I'm going to make 2 more packs like this and then see if that's enough to fill up the binding on mine, and I'll show you how to stitch it up. So now I'm just kind of getting all my papers centered up and aligned nicely. I measured this and it is 7 by 13 inches. So I know my papers need to be, they're going to end up being a little bit smaller than that so they don't stick out of the sides. So I kind of used this one as a template and ripped it down to the size that I think they're all going to be in the end. And then I just made sure all the bottom edges are lined up the way I want. And then everything's just kind of generally centered. We're going to trim off on either side, but I wanted to make sure that the papers aren't all like crooked and wonky in here. So just kind of like flip through and make sure your edges are the way you want. Like see how this one's like a little bit crooked. Just get it all lined up the way you want and make sure they're oriented the way that you want them to be. So I had some that I tore along the edge, and I want that to be in the book hook. I don't want it to be a clean edge. So I just wanted to make sure that that torn edge is down towards the bottom. And well, it wouldn't matter up here anyway because I'm not going to trim that short. But if it was up at the top, like how this notebook paper has this at the top, it might get lost. Like this might end up getting trimmed off. So I think I'm going to swivel that one to put these holes on the bottom. So just kind of flip through and make sure everything is lined up and oriented the way that you want it to be. And then we'll fold this whole thing in half and stitch it together. Here are all my bundles. I ended up with 3 bundles, and I think each one had about 15 sheets of paper. So when it's doubled over, it's thick enough that it fills up this spine nicely here. But you'll want to just check yours, and you might have to experiment with how many papers you need to fill your spine. So I'm just going to put these in here and kind of line things up and see where I need to trim these edges off. I don't want the papers to go all the way to the edge. Maybe along the top and the bottom it's okay, but along this side I don't want it to be sticking out at all. So I'm going to just mark this line here and then just trim up the papers like a little bit to the left of the line I'm marking. And then we can just mark the top here also. And I'll just go in with a ruler and make sure it's straight. And then you can trim it with, if you have like a paper cutter. I would not want to do this with scissors, but if you have like a paper slicer, you could do that. Or you can use just like a craft knife, whatever works for you. I'm going to try to do mine with a craft knife for now, but then I might move on to my paper cutter if it's a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to trim up all these edges and then I'll meet you back here. I happen to notice, like, look at these scraps that are left behind. Do you know what these would be perfect for? Bookmarks, so you can go right back to the beginning of the video and watch it through again. So this is what I'm going to be sewing my pages down onto. I'm just going to sew them on and then glue it in, but I need to punch holes in it, so it's going to end up looking something like this. But I want to figure out where I'm going to punch my holes, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to take off the front page from this packet here, and then I marked where this hole puncher, it has like a groove here, like it will only reach so far. So I'm just going to see like where, as far up as that can reach, and it's about right there. So I just put a dot there so I know that I can reach there to punch a hole there, and then it'll reach up to there on this side. So I marked those two, and then I need to put a hole in the middle here. And you can either do it with a needle, or if you have like a hole puncher that'll reach all the way up there. They make one of these that will reach really far into the page, but this one does not. So I think what I'm going to do is like bend it in half and like punch on the fold. But before I do anything like that, I want to set up like a guide so I know where to punch like the holes on my spine, because it's going to be stitched from here onto here in 3 places. So let's punch these ones, and then I'm going to use these ones to mark on the cardboard, and then we'll punch the cardboard. Okay, so you can see that the cardboard is a little bit taller than the paper, just by a tiny bit, but I'm just going to line it up on here, and then I'm going to mark it with a pencil so that I know where to punch the holes on the cardboard. Okay, so I've marked here and here, and then I want to put one in the middle of those. So I'm just going to use my ruler to do that, and kind of, I'll just quickly measure here to see what's about the halfway point. So I'm just going to mark that there, and as long as the hole lines up on the cardboard and the paper, it'll all be fine. It doesn't matter if it's like perfectly in the middle. You just want to make sure that your holes line up on both. So these look like they're pretty straight going up vertically. I just want to make sure that they're fairly straight because you don't want to sew your pages in all crooked. Okay, so these look good. And then I'm going to mark about like, I don't know, like 1/4 of an inch to the left and the right. And then we'll have 3 spots that we can sew in our 3 packets of our papers. Okay, so like here and here. And then we'll do the same thing for all 3. Okay, so this is all marked. It's a little bit easier if you just draw the lines, and then wherever they intersect, just put your dots there. That's where you're going to punch. This is kind of like cruddy, like this is peeling up and stuff, but that's okay because it's going to be glued in. No one's going to see this because I'm going to cover it. So let's just go ahead and punch the holes. If you don't have a puncher like this, you could use like a really thick needle or whatever you can find that's sharp enough to poke through the cardboard, and then just kind of drill yourself these little holes here. Okay, there we go. So this one is a little bit off, but I think that's going to be okay. Maybe I'll even just widen it a little. So that'll be close enough because when we stitch, we can get it through that hole. So now I just want to make sure this lines up with my pages, and yeah, it's pretty good. So you can see it's just like a little bit off on these ones, but I want to go ahead and mark the center dot here while I have this template. And now I know where to punch on the papers. I just used this on the fold of the paper and just punched it through on the fold. So then when I open it out, it has a hole there. So I'm going to use this as my guide for punching the rest of the pages, and then we'll stitch them in. I only need to mark like this middle dot, but for these ones, I don't really need to mark it because I know that this punch only reaches up to that far on the page. So I don't really need to measure for this. So I don't think it'll go through this whole thickness. Well, maybe it will. I'm going to try it, but I can just push it up into this crease here until it doesn't go any further, and then just punch it there. So this is going to be the spine of our book. I covered it, so now it doesn't matter that it looked all like rough, like where the cardboard is ripped and stuff. I had this fabric bag. Something came in this and I decided just to save the fabric, and I just cut out a rectangle and then glued it over top of the spine, so now it'll look nice and neat. And you can see the holes through there, and it should make it really easy. I'm going to be using this wax thread. This is really thick thread. It's good for bookbinding or like sewing like leather or thick materials like that. And then I'll also use this really large needle, so it makes it really easy to go through all the stacks of paper and the cardboard and everything. And you don't have to have a separate binding like this. You can sew it directly into this one, but then your stitches will show on the outside. But if you're covering it anyway, then maybe it doesn't matter. I just thought it would be easier to do this separate piece because there was no good way for me to punch the holes into the center of this spine on the box. So I'm just going to measure out like 3 lengths of this book, and that should be enough thread. I have my 3 packets here, and I ended up just using the hole puncher and punching directly into the fold here, like punching on the fold so that it would go the whole way through all the sheets. So arrange your packets in the order that you want them to be bound, and I'm going to do this one first. It'll be all the way on the right hand side because it'll be the last pages in the book. Okay, so you start in the center hole here and then leave a string on the inside because you're going to tie it at the end. So just leave like a long enough tail that you can tie it. And then we'll go through, this is the end packet, so I'm going to go through the middle section, but this very last hole here. And then I want to come up to the top. So I'll go through this top right hole up here and just make sure it's the right one. So it's the one that's going to be all the way on the right side when your book's flipped over. And then through the top hole. Oh, the string almost went. Okay, hang on to your string. Okay, then we're going to go all the way to the bottom hole. Okay, and just pull it snug as you go. I'm just hanging onto this one because I don't want it to slip through. And then all the way on the right, all the way on the bottom. Okay, and we'll pull that snug. And then back up to the middle to come back through one more time. Okay. And then just pull that all snug. You want to have one string on the left-hand side of your middle string here. So I have one tail that's on the left and one tail that's on the right, and then we'll tie it over top of this string that's down through the middle of the book. So just make sure it's all snug. Okay, and then if you want to tie a square knot, if you don't know how to do that, you're going to put the left over the right. Okay, and pull, and now right over left. And that makes a nice snug knot that won't slip through. Okay, so we've found our first packet, and I will do the other 2 the same method and then just stitch through the appropriate holes. And then we'll go ahead and glue this in with some hot glue when it's time. I have all the pages sewn in here now, and I was thinking after I tied the knots, maybe I should have stitched it in reverse so that the knot ended up on the back. So that might be something you want to keep in mind when you make yours. Now we need to cover the cardstock here with something pretty. I have this peel and stick wallpaper. I'm just going to go ahead and use this to cover it, but you could certainly use whatever you have on hand. If you have like wrapping paper or scrapbook paper that you just want to like Mod Podge on here, or if you wanted to paint it, you could use like gouache and paint your cover, but I'm just going to use this peel and stick. I found when working with this, it's best not to peel all the backing at once. Just peel off some and rip it so that you have just like a little bit that you have to work with rather than the whole sheet, because it gets really hard, it gets wrinkly sometimes. So I'm just going to peel off a little section here, and that'll help me get started. And then I'll just peel it and press it down as I go. So now I want to fold in the sides and make everything look nice and neat. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this in tight to make sure that it gets on the edge of the book there. Okay, so I think that looks good. So we need to glue in our binding here. And that fits really well. So I'll just cut a rectangle to cover this and then I'll be back. Okay, our junk journal is almost finished. We have all of our signatures stitched in here. And then I'm just gonna glue this binding in with this hot glue. So I'm just gonna put hot glue all over this binding area and stick it in, and then our junk journal is finished. Okay, so just make sure that it's right side up, like it's the way that you want it to be. And yeah, this looks good. Okay, so let's just stick this in. Okay, so I just want to hold it here for a second while the glue cools off, just to make sure that it's really solidly stuck in there. And just make sure everything lines up. Okay, and that looks pretty good. I hope you had fun making this junk journal with me from your recycling bin. I would never believe that this was made out of a cookie box.
If you share your work on Instagram, you can tag me at my McDoodles. I'd love to see what you created. I'll see you in the next class.